Great. Hi, my name's Mark Davidson. I work with Wine Australia, primarily in the US, but basically with the North American team. And my function is Market Development Manager is my title. And ultimately what I do is we do a lot of trade education work, working very closely with sommeliers and retailers to try and do something a little different with Australian wine and introduce them, or in some cases reintroduce them to the other side of the Australian business that they may not have seen for a while or at all.
And how do you go about doing that?
A couple of different ways. The primary thing that's worked really well for us is what we're calling the SIP program, which is a sommelier immersion program. So we focused on getting groups of sommeliers, small focused groups of sommeliers in various cities. We've got 10 in the US right now and 2 in Canada. And they commit to a 2-hour session once a month for 6 months. We focus in on the major varieties in Australia, but specifically talking about the regional expressions of those varieties. We do Riesling, and we focus on all the Riesling producing regions, but hopefully they walk away with some understanding of Eden Valley and Clare. And we work them through that, and then on the final session, based on some essays and some participation and wine and food pairing menus, we pick the top 2 people, take them down to Australia for a 2-week tour of the viticultural areas of Australia. So in all, there's probably 22 sommeliers and some independent retailers involved in the mix, and we take them down to Australia.
Quite honestly. Now, what's exciting you in the world of Australian wine these days?
I think I've always been a fan of Riesling generally, and I think I'm still always stunned when I go back and try young sort of Clare and young Eden Valley Rieslings. I think they've never been better. They're still as exciting as they ever were. I definitely think one of the exciting things that has gotten a lot of the sommeliers in the US excited has been Hunter Semillon, young and old, especially the old versions, but even the young stuff having with fresh oysters and what have you. But I think that's been fun. But probably for me personally, Pinot Noir from Australia right now.
Now, where in Australia do you think the most exciting Pinots are coming from?
Oh, I have to be careful about being too specific, but Victoria, the state of Victoria, without a doubt, is sort of Pinot central, if you like, and there's certainly, notwithstanding some wonderful wines coming out of Tasmania, but you'd have to pretty much put at the forefront would be Mornington Peninsula for me. I love the style of Mornington Peninsula, and Yarra Valley, maybe a bit of a toss-up there, but anything around that whole area that James Halliday refers to as the dress circle around Melbourne, if you like. There's such great examples, and it's really a style that I think people are quite shocked when you present to them in general, in that it's a much more restrained style of New World Pinot, even though I think that's an overused term nowadays. But in terms of the New World Pinot producers, you'll find Australian Pinot is actually a bunch more restrained than you might find from parts of New Zealand, certainly from California and other parts of the world. So that's a bit of a shock to the system, and certainly in terms of food friendly, brilliant stuff.
Well, for many people, their perception of Australian wine is, unfortunately, it's sort of very, very inexpensive, cheap, it's overblown, overripe, and Shiraz, of course. How are you actually going to change that perception? Apart from the SIP program, what other ideas do Wine Australia have to actually introduce people to the myriad qualities that one can find from all across Australia?
It's a good question. It's also something that I think's important too, because that style of wine, the fun, affordable, varietally correct Shiraz, it's not something we want to completely abandon, because I think Australia does it well. But I think that when you inundate the marketplace with that certain style of wine, which is what we've done, people would move on to other areas and they don't realise there's a diversity there. So we're trying various things with consumer shows to try and move people up to this sort of concept of Generation Next and regional heroes, if you like, where we want to get people to start talking rather than Australian Shiraz. We'd like to get people to say something a little bit more specific than that, or pick any variety that Australia does quite well. And I think it's about sort of getting people to understand that there are regional variations and regional differences, and it's worth paying a few extra pennies for it. And in some cases, we're not talking about going all the way up to necessarily paying hundreds of dollars for a bottle of wine. We're talking $15, $16, $18, $19, $20 a bottle. And yes, that's considered to be premium, but it's there. And I actually think Australia competes on a world scale in that sort of price point probably better nowadays than we do at the cheap and cheerful end. Let's face it, Chile and Argentina do a pretty good job down there as well. And with sustainability issues and drought and a few other things, it's getting harder and harder to keep those price points that we were accustomed to down at that. Look at the exchange rate now with the US dollar, not a good thing for Australian exporters. But I think there's lots of wonderful wines that are stepping stone wines. I think we talked earlier about Robert Oatley's wines. What a great example of regionally specific and affordable, varietally correct and slightly more complex wines. And that's kind of what we're looking at, little stepping stones. And leading people into to realise that, hey, when you've had the cheap and cheerful sunshine in a bottle, there's actually more, and you can move upwards on the scale. So at consumer shows, we tend to try and pour those sorts of wines as well as a nice array of affordables, but just a few stages up, just give people an idea that, spend a few extra pennies, there's something worth it.
Excellent. Thank you very much for
You're
joining
welcome.
us.
Thanks for your time.
Sorry, hold on a second. Thank you very much for joining us today at Good Food Revolution.
You're welcome. Thank you.